Hi, I'm Catherine Llewellyn, the host of the podcast. You can find out all about Truth and Transcendence on truthandtranscendence.com. And you can find out all about me on beingspace.world, where you will find my online coaching offering as well as my UK-based workshops. The Freedom of Spirit workshop for liberation and empowerment, the Pellower Radical Shift in Consciousness workshop for spiritual expansion, and transformational coaching for exploring the mind-body-spirit connection on the expansive path. You can also support the podcast by actually making a donation. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. Today, I'm delighted to welcome special guest Justin L. Shaw, who's here today to talk about a number of things, but we're going to start with finding the funny. Justin is a little bit Deepak, a little bit Tupac. He is a mystical comedian, a spiritual Sherpa, and the author of Sourcery 101. And Sourcery is spelled Sourcery. And I can tell you straight away where to find Justin, which is awakenthesorcerer.com. And again, sorcerer is spelled Sourcerer. So, Justin, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, it's great to be here, there, everywhere.
Excellent. Here, there, everywhere. Where are we? Who even knows? So, what's your, finding the funny? I think you came up with that theme, didn't you? Can you remember the first time that you kind of noticed that finding the funny was like one of your things, that it was part of your unique vibration here on the planet?
Yeah, I remember very, very well. I mean, it was, growing up in my household, I would say it was an emotional vacuum. It just was not, and I'm kind of a more sensitive guy that likes to talk about and, talk things through. And my mother was she was an isolator, and that's how she handled her anxiety and depression and things like that. So, most of my memories growing up were, dad was around a little bit, but then they kind of divorced, and that was never a good marriage to begin with. So it was really just me and my mom growing up, and I just remember we were in our separate rooms. She'd usually be in her room and I'd be in my room, and we'd convene together to go do something together. That was our time together, and then we'd go back to our rooms. So that was the prevailing memory growing up. And one thing that got me through that was I just, the TV wasn't just a babysitter, it was a full-blown parent. So it just all the American pop culture at the time and kind of the 90s there, really I absorbed that. There was, Saturday Night Live was hitting it crazy out of the ballpark with, like Adam Sandler and Chris Farley and, like Phil Hartman and all these legendary comedians, and Simpsons was at the top of its game in the 90s, and Jim Carrey was phenomenal. I just loved doing impressions of him, and so that's what I realized that took me out of my pain, was making that was my first drug. I didn't There's some people that tried drugs very, 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 very young, and I'm grateful to not have tried drugs that young. It was kind of what you consider normal time. It's 16, kind of, pot and drinking and stuff. But, my younger years, that was, and there was some food in there too, certainly. But that was the attention high I got from making people laugh was something that made me feel good. And, the impersonations I would do, impersonate people and voices and things like that, which were a lot of fun and made people laugh. And that's what got me out of my pain. So I gravitated towards it very, very quickly and very, very young. I would even make my mom laugh. Like I'd hear a voice on the radio and try to impersonate it and try to make her laugh, which was hard to do. She's very kind of in her pain. I remember a lot growing up, but I did make her laugh every once in a while, so that was fun. But that's certainly where it came from. Was just that got me out of me. And that's where comedy first entered my life, getting me out of me.
And do you think that's what comedy does? Do you think that's part of the purpose of comedy, to help get people out of whatever sort of limited state they might find themselves in?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what it does. It just brings such good healing energy, and that's why the book I wrote in the system and like that, kind of everything that I'm about is, I tell my story a little bit in the beginning of the book, and it could have been really depressing, but I made it a point to make it just a big joke, and the trials and tribulations of my life, and there were some, it's that whole, the theater face of the dramatic and the laugher, and that's what it is. So like that might kind of laugh, think, feel like that cycle is what I aimed at in my book. And it's what I aim at when I talk to people is like, just rotate these three things and that's healing. So, and because you can't be in a state of fear or these lower base emotions and heal. It doesn't work that way. You can't be in those lower base states. And so, and expect to heal anything. So bringing that energy up is what I've noticed. And, people will only kind of surrender and believe to the current emotional state they're in, which is why, it's very difficult for, I mean, doctors like right now, like I get very angry hearing, a doctor that coming in with prognoses because they're not, just because they have if they have a piece of paper, it doesn't give them, having that doesn't give them divine authority. So, when you come into a patient and you already tell them that they have cancer and it is what it is, they that's depressing news and that sucks. But right after that is when the cancer patient is now accepting that they're in this state of fear, and so they're going to accept anything that matches that state that they're in. So then the doctor says, well, you have 6 months to live. Well, now the doctor has just programmed that person to die, and that's bullshit. That's bullshit. So and so the opposite can happen with laughter. So like you can program people for health, and that's, I come at it and try make people laugh and put their guard down, and then I come in with some like some truths and stuff that's going to help. So that's something that's really really important, and it's very effective. It's very effective to make people in the right energy to kind of get this healing material.
Right. So that's what some people might call reframing. It's you're using humor as a way to kind of trick yourself out of being stuck in that negative state, which then just breeds more negativity. So,
Mm.
so did you start doing that kind of instinctively as a child, or did you have some idea of what you were actually doing?
I guess it was probably both. There was definitely, that was how I made friends when I decided to start making friends. Like middle school was just kind of a loner and going through some stuff then. But when I started kind of coming out my shell in high school and stuff, and that's what I used was that humor, and I think it was just kind of inside me to know that this is a good way in, and so that's the route I went, and it worked well. It's a very good way of meeting people, and getting in acceptable social circles, and that's what I used, and it worked.
Yeah. And then you actually became a comedian. How did that happen? What was the journey around that?
Well, I always knew that like I was gonna at least try for after college. I went to college, Arizona State out here, and I always just wanted to get through college and do it, and I was high on drugs and alcohol throughout the whole time period. So how I graduated is a true, if you don't believe in miracles, I graduated. Just remember that. But right after that, I knew I wanted to give it a go. So I moved to Los Angeles and gave it a go. But, of course, my addictions followed right behind me. I thought it would be good to like leave them in college, but wherever you go, there you are. So, that they followed me right back over. And, I would do like stand up. I was never paid. I was never anything. I never did any of the big shows or anything like that. It was just, like little sidebars and open mics and just these little things. And I remember doing okay, but the whole thing with stand-up comedy is, you need to make it through a set standing up. And given that I was drinking as much as I was and using opiates, and like, standing up just wasn't a requirement I could live up to at that time. So yeah, it was a miserable failure, but I'm using, it's full circle now. Now I want to create something a whole new thing. Like I'm not interested in just making people laugh, and that whole scene when I got sober was like you don't go on stage till like 10 o'clock. Everyone is drunk. There's drinks everywhere. I gave up on it. I was like, this is not my scene. I don't want to do this anymore. I like making people laugh, but this scene, the life of a comedian, not for me. So now I want to make something completely different. I like to call myself a mystical comedian. Like, why can't, I kind of have a show where I don't just make people laugh, but think and feel too. And, they start out with like a heavy meditation and get people in the right mood and then kind of do stand-up philosophy and, start at 6 instead of 10. What's, so, like these, so there's things I'm trying to create something just new because there are rules and people get stuck in these paths and things like this. Well, you can just create something new. What's wrong with that? Like, so I'm really grateful to be using those skills, and the book is very funny too. So it's served me well.
That's great. You seem to be quite resourceful and kind of creative on your feet. You're like taking whatever situation you're in and going, that's not working. Right, I'll do something else. I'll do something new. You didn't keep battering away at the standard way of being a comedian. You kind of stepped back and went, hold on, why can't we start at 6 p.m.? Which I have to say, now I'm a bit older now, I can completely resonate to that.
Yeah.
Why do we have to wait till I used to go clubbing and you just did not go anywhere near the club until at least 11 p.m. And then you might get on the dance floor around about midnight. And if you did it any earlier than that, you were really not cool.
Yeah. 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 Why? I mean, these are just things that, yeah, especially as you get older, like sleep I believe good constant sleep is a superpower. I think it's just as powerful as taking any like human growth hormone or something. It's just, I mean, it just really, it's a superpower to get that kind of sleep. And I want to do that. And, I don't want a bunch of alcohol served around what I'm doing either. So like it's making something new. And so I haven't done it yet, but that's the plans. The everything is very new. This year's about creating awareness, and the book is kind of the seed that I want to plant the career tree. But yeah, that's something I'm excited about for the future, for sure.
Fantastic. So you've had quite a significant shift really quite recently, and it's great to talk to you at this stage with it while it's still really, really fresh. So what happened to bring that shift about?
Yeah, that's something I'm out to spread the word of, right? Like that's what I experienced. After a time period, I kind of went to rehab in 2010, and it finally stuck, and I did the whole, I there was no spirituality in my life before then, but after that point, I kind of went into the AA and Christianity route, which kept me sober for several years. But one of the things I realized during that time that I was sober, but I wasn't necessarily healing, and there's no emphasis on any sort of thriving in AA or these religions, which is a huge part of healing is thriving. So I wanted to create something new because I just realized that Christianity was this amazing like house, right? Like it's 14 bathrooms, 15 bedrooms, and there's a theater, and there's just this amazing mansion, but you're not allowed to investigate outside the mansion. And they say stay in the mansion, you can't go out there. It's a zombie apocalypse out there, right? Like so. But that I realized that it's built on a cracked foundation of fear and judgment, and for some people it will start to crumble, and the mansion isn't so great. And that's happened when my mother was dying, and I had all this programming inside my head that she was going to hell and all this bullshit, just crap. And so it made her dying year, it amped up the trauma 10 times. And that's when I started like getting outside the mansion because it was crumbling. It was falling around me. So I got out and I started investigating other religions, other ways of thinking, other getting into meditation and, doing this shadow work. And I started doing these things and I saw a shaman who in his 2 weeks helped me more than 20 years of AA, Christianity, and therapy. So and around that time, I had a bliss attack. It's the best way I can explain it. It was like a panic attack if you replace panic with love. So, and it just came out of nowhere. There was no drugs at that time. I'd been 3 or 4 weeks clean. Might have had a coffee that morning. That's it. And this was onset, just took me over. And it was like 3 hours of just waves of this intense feeling while getting kind of downloads from the universe, right? Like, so, and I knew these were truths because of how I was feeling in the time. So it was just this true moment of we're all on airplane mode. And that's what I realized is children are all off airplane mode, and sometime around 7 to 9, it gets turned on in every single child by society, but you can turn it back off. And once it's turned off, it stays off. And that's the beautiful part about it. So it was just this moment of just pure bliss. And I knew everything changed at that moment. Like I knew I was on a different path. Still took a couple years for me for the book to kind of come together, and like I was trying to figure things out. But you know, the phone never stopped ringing, right? It's just sitting there on the line. It was just ringing, ringing, ringing. And for like 2 years, I was not answering it. But I knew it was ringing. And then I finally, about 2 years ago, answered it. And this whole idea for a new way to look at healing, a new way to look at trauma, a new way to approach it, all kind of came to me. And in this amazing, bliss attacks, I've had several of these bliss attacks, and this is a map for your own bliss attack, you could call it. So this is what I did in my life to be able to, turn myself off airplane mode.
How amazing.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Good for you. I mean, in that story, I love the way you just went, again, like you did with the comedian thing. You just went, hold on, this is not enough. This isn't doing it for me. And you didn't sit there moaning and whinging about it or arguing or bitching or whatever. Instead, you said, I'm going to do something different. And it sounds like you completely immersed yourself in a lot of really quite interesting and possibly quite challenging experiences before you got the bliss attack. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. When you cross the river of change, there's a massive undercurrent of discomfort that you have to fight through. And that's what, it is not, I like to say, like, Sourcery is, it's not, it's simple, but it's not easy. And so it's a map to get you there, but it's always your journey. And the whole spiritual Sherpa thing, a Sherpa can't get to the top of Everest without one, but a Sherpa is also not going to throw you on its back and carry you to the top. It's your journey. So, but that's what it is. It's just been so much fun to kind of spread this around, I guess. It's just kind of day by day, just kind of rolling with it and seeing where it goes and seeing what happens. And it's fun. It's been fun. Yeah.
Amazing. Does the Sherpa help you carry your baggage with you?
No, but that's your baggage. You got to carry your own
right.
baggage.
What's the Sherpa actually doing? What is the Sherpa actually doing?
Guide. It's just just a guide. They're not carrying your bags. They're carrying their own bags, and it's just a guide up to the top. And spirituality there is no summit in spirituality. We're infinite beings, so we have infinite room to grow. But so it can be even more daunting of a journey in that there's no stop point. But there's points at which, like I've gotten to now, where there's just such massive healing that's happened, and you don't even realize that you were suffering that much until you start to heal. Like, it's very, very interesting. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are deeply suffering and they don't even really know it because that's just what they've been used to their whole life. They have no idea. And so kind of getting those people to come around, and I'd like to get to the point where I'm kind of more macro working with people, but I'm starting with kind of micro and working with one-on-one. So there's always a free spiritual Sherpa lesson if you're interested. But it's your journey. It's your journey for sure.
Amazing. Well, I bet that you are very fun to work with, because I love this kind of optimistic but not hyped up kind of energy that you have around it. Some people who are kind of optimistic about this sort of thing are a bit sort of glossy and unreal. You seem very sort of grounded in it, whilst at the same time, no, hold on a minute, I want some thriving here. I don't just want to be kept off the drugs. I actually want to thrive. I want to help other people thrive. So
yeah, that's the biggest aspect to it, and that's really what separates it. Like, I when I kind of came up with it, it was obvious I had to come up with some way of organizing all this stuff, and I thought about the 12 steps of AA, and there's some good and bad. The world is a world of gray. AA can be helpful, but it can also be kind of disempowering. So it's just focuses sobriety. There's no thriving to it. So so I thought, moving forward is good, but moving up is better. So that they're rungs, because a bird has a better perspective of things than a worm. So they're rungs that you kind of climb and kind of get a better perspective on things. And there is a big emphasis on thriving, because that's a huge part of healing that's completely lacking the 12 steps. It's just, I mean, you look at those things and it gets, these are 12 steps to sobriety, but for me, without the thriving aspect, I went back to drugs and alcohol. The thriving aspect is what keeps, like AA will get you sober, and then you got to keep yourself sober. Well, this kind of will get you sober and keep you sober if you follow it, because it's how to find your bliss, how to find your path in life. That's the most important part of healing. And not drinking or not using is a nice side effect of when you heal that spiritual bankruptcy. It's just a side effect. And that's the way I look at it now.
Yeah. And you emphasized on some of the things I've looked at that you chose 13 rungs for a particular reason. What was the reason for that?
Yeah, that was very specific. So immediately you're going to get working on your shadow when you see 13 rungs, because it's the number 13 in America is seen as a very unlucky number, to where we don't have 13th floors in hotels. I mean, there is one, but it's called the 14th floor, and it's ridiculous. So it's seen as so unlucky that we feel we have to go those routes. I mean, that's extreme. That's an extreme route to go for a hotel to not name their 13th floor the 13th floor. So, but the truth is that it's not true. There, in tarot, it's extremely important. It's death, rebirth, and transformation, which is what Sourcery is all about. And 13 is also considered to be a divine and very lucky number. So immediately you start asking yourself what's true and what's not. And that's a huge part of kind of the whole sorcery thing. And that maybe some of these religions and things that, religion is paradoxically the one thing that kind of stands in the way of a true religious experience, which is what I had. It's just this epiphany experience. And, you can keep all the good things and people about religion and lose all the rules and dogma and all the things you need to act. It's a form of control. And so, I just started, that was starting on my path, is starting to see these things, and like, the world is a world of gray. And I realized, Christianity in particular can be both helpful and destructive, and it is both. So, you can keep all the good things, and if you just get rid of the fear and the judgment, and you're going to hell, and do it this way, and don't be gay, and all this just garbage. It's just garbage. Just get rid of it. And now you're spiritual, which is the big difference between spiritual and religion. Religion is taught, spirituality is found. Religion separates and spirituality unites. So religion, if we're trying to create unity, religion just isn't going to work. I mean, you look at the Bible itself, it's segregated into two parts. So, to have it unite people is just simply not going to happen. So these are big parts of the shadow that we have to question. And that's what that number kind of gets going. You start with your shadow work. It's like, 13's not unlucky. And in fact, it's not only not unlucky, it's lucky. So it's the complete opposite. So it's very important to question the things we believe, because they might not be true.
So even the choice of the number of rungs is an intervention in and of itself. So I could just say to some, Justin's got 13 rungs in his book. Just think about that.
Yeah, you're good.
And that's the first step, to just even consider that before they even open the book.
Yep. Yeah. It's immediately that. Yeah, I want people to start questioning things before you even open it. There's 13 there for a very specific reason.
Fantastic. I mean, over here, the number 13 is considered to be unlucky, but not to the point of pretending there isn't a 13th floor in a building.
Yeah,
I'd heard this about the US, the 13th floor not being, and I thought, can't be real.
It is.
You're confirming it's actually real. It just goes to show that, commitment can create reality, can't it? You're committed to that reality, and there you go. That's the way it is.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, one hotel started, and now they all do it. Maybe it's not as much anymore, but I stayed at a lot of hotels growing up, and yeah, there was a 13th floor, but we just pretend it's not. It's ridiculous.
So let me just ask you. So we started off by talking about finding the funny, which I can see how that's been really crucial for you in your life, and how you've also then this three step thing where you said laugh, think,
Feel.
laugh, think,
Yeah.
feel. I love that, and I'd like to come back to that in a moment. But before that, is that on these 13 rungs, is there one in there that particularly calls on that finding the funny essence or idea or kind of lever?
I mean, I used a lot of it in my personal journey, the first kind of, I don't really call them chapters or anything, but I mean, I certainly used, but there's a story in there. I was in rehab with the rapper DMX, and I make that that's kind of the way I open the book, like with a really funny story. And then I kind of get into my background and past. And there's jokes throughout it because it's good to keep people light. Um, but emotional alchemy, I guess would be the closest. And that's turning in these base emotions we have and to elevated emotions that, obviously alchemy is the ancient, which real sorcerers would do in like hooded robes and cauldrons and stuff, and they would make base metals into gold, supposedly. Science may say that's not possible, but science can be kind of boring sometimes. So, but the emotional alchemy is very real because I do it every day, and especially when you can turn fear into fascination. What you're scared of become fascinating. Now you've alchemized that emotion. What would it be like, if you're not living your authentic life? What would it feel like to, that's what it feel like. Oh, what am I scared of? So fear, pain can be alchemized into motivation. A lot of people do this, and that's and there's all these other people too. We can get jealous, we can be fearful, other people can offend us, and all these things. But there's this whole Mel Robbins has a book out, is Let Them Theory, which is helpful and good, but I think about it deeper, and let them kind of sounds like, well, screw them, like, so you're kind of creating this distance, which is much better than getting caught up in another person's goings on. So it's much better than that. But instead of just, letting them, study them is what I like to say. So it's like, it creates empathy. So now you're not just like disconnecting yourself. What makes that, kind of let them thing is also kind of what detracts to it. You're just completely detaching yourself from other people. And that's good and bad. It's good and bad. And so emotional alchemy is, the best way to alchemize is to get curious, like why do I feel this person is offending me? What is going on in their life that they're acting this way, and there starts to be some kind of empathy for them instead of just ignoring them and just kind of screw off, like there's kind of starts to be an empathy. And so there's several ways you can kind of alchemize those emotions, and it's a big part of becoming a sorcerer. But and laughter, forgiveness and laughter are two instant. Kindness, forgiveness, laughter, these are very instant, emotional alchemizers. So there's kind of a way I have to do it in there. And but that's a big part. Figuring that out, it was a big part of my healing.
Amazing. So that's rung number 5, isn't it? I think that's,
Yeah.
I think I certainly resonate to that. I think most people can resonate to that. The importance of emotional alchemy, which is a great way to put it. Have you ever been to one of the gratitude cafes? Do you know the Gratitude Cafe? There's one in California that I went to.
I've never heard of this. No,
Gratitude Cafe. I was doing a weird thing over there, and we all went to the Gratitude Cafe after, and it's this cafe where every single menu item has a name, which is something like "I am infinite bliss," or
Oh my God, that's amazing.
"You are pure expression of the divine," or and you have to say that name. You're not allowed to say, "I want the ravioli with the spicy sauce." You have to say the name they've got on the menu.
That's fantastic. Oh my God. No, I've never heard of this.
This is in Marin County, I think, this place. And then
I'll visit it for sure.
when everyone's got all their meals and everything, suddenly one of the staff will come and stand right in the middle of the restaurant Everyone knows what's going to happen except the new people, right? And they stand there. In this case, it was a woman, and she just started laughing. And she just continued to laugh, like this full, amazing belly laugh and it was real. And you can't help it. People started to laugh, and it rippled out and rippled out and rippled, and the whole place was just roaring with laughter within about 10 minutes.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, that's proof, that's how that the energetic waves, and that's how things work. I mean, we can't hide our emotions from each other because it's a vibration, and immediately see someone, I'm fine. Like, come on. Okay, fine. Like, you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. But like, come on, I know you're not fine. I can feel it. But that's it. Yeah. It's just that waves of, and yeah. And they always say, like, just look into a mirror and start laughing. It's really awkward and weird, but I've done it before, and it does. And then you force yourself to laugh while you're looking in this mirror. And then you actually start to laugh for real, which is cool. Like, and then you feel better afterwards. So it's a weird kind of little trick, but if try going in front of a mirror and just laughing, you'll actually start to laugh. It's fascinating.
This might sound weird, but I do sometimes do that, or just suddenly start laughing.
It's not weird to me. I mean, it might be weird to someone else. I do the same thing. So.
It's almost like the body wants to laugh, doesn't it? If we're not sort of closing it in with our negative thoughts and all that sort of thing, it wants to, in that experience I described, it's like our bodies just wanted to join in with the laughter.
Yeah. I mean, there's a constant kind of looping, and that's how change happens. There's this looping sequence between how we feel and what's in front of us, and that's how things can get so screwed up. Is like, you can't get out of this. In order for change to happen, you have to feel a different way. But if what's in front of you isn't making you feel that way, then you're looping the sequence, and change never happens. You have to get yourself out of it and change how you feel. Then slowly over time, things around you will start to change. Then it'll start feeding and then you don't have to try as hard. But there's this constant looping feedback system that's going on. And in the beginning, it takes a lot of work and effort, which is why people just don't do it. Because it takes a lot of work and effort. I mean, they call the ghettos here in America the trap, and that's what it is, right? Like, it's a trap, and that's that constant looping sequence. If I can't get out of this, and then these beliefs cause them to get out, and then they're in jail for 30 years. So it's very difficult to get out, but it is possible, and feeling good is the ladder out of that trap.
Beautiful. So who is your book for?
Well, I wrote it for me because I needed it. I needed to heal, and it's a very meta book in that I'm healing myself as I'm writing about these things. And like, in the very beginning, when I came up with it, I was still struggling, and so I had this whole system. It's just like, well, like, what a joke this is if I'm not like doing these things. So after I came up with the system, then I started really doing these things and writing about it as I'm like coming up with these. So it's really fascinating how it came about. And, it is that field of energy that surrounds us at all times. I always say source energy is like explaining water to a fish. So if, like, that's tough to surround you, move because of it, is, you wouldn't be here without water. And it's the same thing for us. We wouldn't be here without this energy. And so it is, use that. But I realized when I wrote it that this could really help a lot of people. And there are a lot of people, like, if this were given to me when I was 20, like, I wouldn't have had to suffer so bad these last 20 years. I could have really gotten everything together, and but I had to come up with it myself. So it's just the way it worked, and that's fine. I'm good with all what I've been through now. But yeah, I wrote it for people that are struggling, and we, the problem is in America that the medical system just doesn't understand chronic illness. They just don't. So, and they're never going to understand chronic illness because they focus on the symptoms. Drug and alcohol addiction was just a symptom. Depression was a symptom. Anxiety was a symptom. These autoimmune disorders, they can be a symptom. There's a lot of symptoms of, gambling and sex. The phone is a huge one. see people that in the gym that can't get through a set of leg extensions without checking their phone. Like if you're constantly human doing, you can never be a human being, and source energy cannot talk to you because you're telling it you're busy. So it's a separation of these symptoms. And that's not to say anything bad, because again, it's that world of gray. The medical community can be helpful and destructive. And so, like if I fall out of a tree and there's a bone sticking out of my arm, that's not a good time for acupuncture. I'm not going to meditate that away. I'm not going to meditate that right back. It needs to be set. Like you need to go to a doctor. It needs to be set. They need to do some surgery. They need to stitch you back up. But after that, now the doctor's part is done. It is the body itself that has the power to heal itself. And what we don't understand is how to set the emotional / spiritual bone for trauma, for these symptoms. And that's what this book does. It emotionally and spiritually sets the bone so that your trauma heals itself. And without that, it's never going to heal. Just like an injury, it's never going to heal properly. And just like with a real injury, you have a scar. It's there. There's a scar, but that scar is a whole lot better than dealing with a gaping wound. And so, it never completely goes away. Your trauma, I've never, like people, but that's that alchemy. So you can alchemize trauma into wisdom. Once you take the emotional charge and that guttural reaction away from the thought, now it's just wisdom. And now it doesn't affect you. It's not affecting every aspect of your life. So that's, that I wrote it as for people that are struggling with a lot of chronic illnesses, that as another option. There should be other options, and maybe the SSRIs and pills, or, maybe they work in conjunction with this. I don't know, but I just know that I feel much better than I ever have before, not on anything. And, there needs to be another option. And I know this works, and there is healing. So I wrote it for people that want another option.
Yeah.
Long-winded answer, but that's what I wrote for.
Well, thank you for doing that on behalf of all those people, because I think there are a lot of what you might call non-specific chronic ailments in the world at the moment. It seems to me more so than when I was a child. It seems there's more of that kind of weird, complex, not really understood stuff going on. And you're absolutely right. There's no sort of pill to just sort that out. So this is fantastic. And like I said before, I like the energy you bring to it. I feel the energy we bring to the things we offer out is so important, because it's that energy that carries across and bridges us to other people, isn't it? And makes it accessible. So just coming back to the thing I picked up on about laugh, think, feel. Where did that come from?
That's just kind of what I kind of came up with originally in when I was writing the book, was just kind of, okay, let's focus on cycling these three things, because I realized that to have people read a book, which is also why I recorded the audio, which probably be out by the time. So there's really no excuse now with the audio out, because I get to do impersonations and tell my own jokes. It's really funny. But, I had to think about, like, this shattered concentration of generation TikTok, right? Like there's no ability for attention anymore whatsoever. So I was like, I have to write a book that's going to keep people's attention. How do I do that? And that's when I started thinking, well, if I just cycle through laugh, think, feel, if just everything in this book is either making people laugh, think, or feel, and I just cycle through that, then I should have a better chance at keeping people engaged in reading it. It's still difficult. I mean, reading a book I applaud people that read a lot of books, and it's tough sometimes, but I tried to, that's where it came from, was keeping people's attention, which is tough to do today.
Yeah. Well, that's great, because you're thinking about the experience they're having while they're reading. You're not just thinking about the experience they're going to have after they've finished reading the book. I think that's very, very important. So now you've written the book is out, the audio book is coming out. So I think I saw somewhere on Instagram, you said that someone had been going on at you, trying to persuade you to start actually making yourself available to do sessions with people. And you finally went, oh, all right. You were resisting it. So
Mhm.
could you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it wasn't something I'd really thought about in the beginning. Like I said, the book has only been published for 3 or 4 months, so it's been very quick. And like I said, I was just told to write this book and let everything fall in place, and that's what I've been doing. So, and someone just said, like you can do really well helping people one on one, which is just a lot of, that's kind of an iron sharpens iron situation where, like, it might seem like I'm helping someone more, but they're helping me just as much, and it's that amazing cycle. And the 13th rung is assist leader, and that's kind of helping others, not just with acts of kindness, but helping others on their journey, which helps you on your journey. And that's so that I realized, like, well, I need to do this because it's in the book. So yeah, but yeah, first session is always free because it's a lot of fun to kind of create rapport and see if it's something you like to do. So, and it's never wasted time for me. So but yeah, that's, I like to say it's half the cost and twice as fun as regular therapy. So it's all up to them, whatever they want to do. But I've started doing it, and it's fun. I really enjoy it, and it's just another avenue that I might do, webisodes, or there's all kinds of stuff that I'm thinking of that I want to do that hasn't happened just yet because it's so new. But you can follow me. The Instagram is sorcerer with a U _13. That's my only social media. I was off social media for like 4 years. It was wonderful. It was like putting blinders on a horse. I ran a better race, but now I realize I have to kind of get back on it and be around people and stuff like that. So it's I think my Instagram account's like 2 months old, but that's where I'll keep updates of stuff, and you can get in contact with me or email sorcerer13@gmail. That one works too if you don't have Instagram. But those are good ways to get in touch. And then the book, you can get it on Amazon and stuff like that. But if you work the book and with me, that's killer. I can tell you that.
That's the sweet spot, right? Excellent. Well, make sure I've got all those links before we go, after I've finished recording and before you leave. So I'll make sure they will go in the show notes.
Yep,
But
I can do that for sure.
We're going to start running out of time, but there's a couple of questions I'd like to ask just before we finish. So the first one is, I think we can all agree that we're in interesting times in the world at the moment, right? And there are a lot of people who are trying to be part of the solution, whether they are just trying to be responsible in their own lives, be a good person, whether they are a leader, a parent, a spiritual teacher, whatever they are, they're trying to help be part of the solution. Is there something you'd like to say to those people, some of whom are listening to this podcast right now as we're speaking? Is there something you'd like to say to those people that you think might be helpful for them to help them just engage a little bit more with some of what we've been talking about today?
I mean, yeah, it's main thing is keep it up, right? Like, because if you found your, follow your bliss, like, if you found your calling and what you're going to do, just keep following it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a huge monetary success or anything like, and but your needs will always be provided. That's for sure. And it could become, you know, something amazing. So you just never know. That's the, if I always like to say, more hope in the world and less expectations. So they're very different things, hope and expectations. If we have less expectations and just keep anchored to hope, that's when magic happens. Because, expecting something to happen and it doesn't happen that way, that creates those energies that need to be alchemized. But if you're not expecting anything and you're just like, oh, that didn't work out, because you're anchored in hope. So, okay, that didn't work out. We're moving on, because the hope is the anchor, and these other things that, you throw out a lot of lines, whatever you got to do when you're fishing. And the more lines in the water, the more fish you're going to catch, but you're not going to catch every line is not going to hit. So and you can't expect, and because that's what really, expect things to happen, expect them on your timetable. I like to say, don't, when you're creating something, don't chase the waiter, right? We don't go up to, we don't place an order at a restaurant and, immediately, the waiter walks away and we follow him and tap him on the back and be like, did you get the order right? Like, when are we when are we getting, is this soon? Like how long? Like I've got, I don't know how you are in the title of waiter. I'm the one doing all the waiting, like that's not how we do things. So when we place an order, whatever that may be, career, monetarily, friends, relationships, whatever that order is, don't chase the waiter, man. Like just let things come to fruition the way they anchored to hope, no expectations. You can't be disappointed if you have no expectations and you're anchored to hope. And that's what keeps it going. So that's
Fantastic.
my advice.
Fantastic. Love it. Don't chase the waiter.
Don't chase the waiter.
So we've talked about a lot today, Justin. It's been fantastic. Has there been a favorite part of our conversation today for you?
Oh man, I mean, I certainly love talking about anything humorous, and that's always my favorite. But it's been altogether great. So I can't really pick out a favorite part. I'd say the advice to people I'd say that was good. That was a good way to kind of bring things to a close, is advice to other people. But because it's pretty solid advice. I figured it out, and it's something that's helping me a ton. So that's information I will gladly share, and hopefully that helps people. So I think that was probably my favorite part.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been so great. Thank you, everyone, all the listeners and the watchers. That's all for Truth and Transcendence for today. Please give us a 5-star rating, a thumbs up, tell your friends, you know what to do. So thank you again, Justin.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been great. It's been real. Thanks, everybody. Aho.
Aho. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. It really helps if you give a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, a review, and share with your friends. If you're looking for transformational coaching or an intensive transformational weekend workshop experience, I can help with that. You can actually help the show by making a donation. Until next time, take care.